welcome everyone to another episode of Notes from the Aleph. An Aleph is a high point from which all things are visible, and from our vantage point we'll be looking at tabletop role-playing games, their design, and the theory behind those designs. Around here, our motto is be fair, build up, and have fun. I'm your host, GriffinVarro, joined by our editor Theta, our local designer Norman Rafferty, and our good friend and GM RedRabbit. When it comes to tabletop role-playing games, I have 15 years experience running, playing, and frequently fixing problematic rule sets at the table. Pronouns are he, him, they, them. Lessons, why don't you go next?
Yes, I go by Lessons here, Lessons Learned 1 here on Twitch, and Lessons Learned over at YouTube. YouTuber, streaming right now, Dragon Age 2, which is clearly not on Rails. And also, I host I host it. I GM, actually, I should say, the Sunday game here on Raptor's channel at 7 o'clock Eastern, US. So you want to join us for lots of fireballs, adventure, and tense moments, you're welcome to join us.
All right, and Red.
Hi, everybody. RedRabbit, he, him. I'm running our Wednesday game of Ironclaw 2nd edition here on the channel, so you should definitely come check that out. I like to play a lot of different weird RPGs that aren't D&D, and also sometimes D&D. I consider myself a student of game design and of narrative design.
And last but not least, Norman Rafferty.
Hello world, I'm Norman Rafferty, he, him. I work for Sanguine Games. I have been doing this a long time. I've seen things. I've done things.
Ominous. Highly ominous. So, as far as the ominousness goes, let's get into the topic. So, as we all here bounce between different games, but one thing that sort of follows most of them around is experience points. From D&D, you can get them for beating up monsters or doing a quest that the GM likes, or for World of Darkness properties, you could earn them for completing personal goals and objectives. Experience is used as a mechanism for discreetly tracking how a character is progressing, usually in the direction of becoming more powerful or versatile for all the troubles that they've gone through. While there's the constant assumption that players can and should become more powerful across every session, is this really the case? So today we're going to be looking at what role experience fills, different methods of advancement, and alternative models for our game altogether. So who'd like to go ahead and take the crack at that first?
Okay, well, I don't remember exactly if this is something that was brought up during the discussion process for this or not. Our inspiration for our podcasts come sporadically and spontaneously, and sometimes we don't actually get to those until many weeks later. But I did warn you guys last week that if we were talking about experience points, I was going to rant at length about the nature of milestone experience and why it really bothers me. So
Grab that flag, run with it.
All right, so I'm going to get started with that then. And I'm going to say this as someone who played a milestone game for a very long time, Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, and I picked it up because at the time I had taken a long break from playing D&D, and when I came back, I wanted to make sure that the game that I was playing with these strangers that I had met at the local game store was as inclusive as possible. And so I took a lot of things for granted that I assumed were just sort of like how most people played the game. A lot of that probably came from popular streaming games like Critical Role as well. But yeah, it seemed obvious that everyone was playing with Milestone XP, so I used that, and I've played with it for a long time. And then I started another game playing with traditional experience points, and I've had a lot of problems. I won't list them out all here.
I need to pause a moment here. For the benefit of our readers at home, what's milestone and what's traditional?
Okay, as a traditional experience point as defined in the 5th edition D&D rules is a system by where every time you defeat a monster, they're worth a certain number of points. Those points are tallied up and then divided equally among the people in the party. And you don't have to have last hit. You don't have to have dealt damage to the monster to get these experience points. But generally, that is how you will level up. You collect these experience points, right, and when you hit certain thresholds, you level up. Milestone instead works this way, that
hold on, I got to interrupt you before we get the angry comments. since third edition, they also do have story rewards where accomplishing any goal can give you experience points. But once again, you're absolutely right. You get experience points and you divide them up among the party.
Exactly. And I'll say too that before I rail about Milestone too much, I'll say I don't think that as written experience in 5th edition works super great either. I've got my own tweaks to it that make it work better in my opinion, but we'll talk about that if we get there. Milestone experience points occur when the GM hands out levels. You don't track points at all, but you hand out levels at certain important points in the story as you progress through, generally after milestone events. It's implied in the book that these events would be like you defeat the boss, or you rescue the princess or prince or sentient dragon, whatever it is. And this is how I played for a long time. And I noticed two things right away that I dislike about milestone experience points. The first one, that's a kind of a pet peeve for me, is the fact that really the GM holds the power of progression in that case. And I'm saying this as someone who was dealing out the experience. But I could tell there were definitely times when players were like, so, when are we going to level up? It's been 4 sessions, 5 sessions. When are we going to do this? And to be fair, I think that a lot of people play the game for the thrill of that feeling of advancement and of character growth or mechanical growth, which I think is fair.
Yeah, underlying all of this is the assumption that my character will become more powerful every session I play. So if you're withholding it, we have no idea or context until you allow it.
Right, and let me be the angry dissenter here because Theta's watching as well, where it's like, I wanted to throw fireballs, and you told me I can't, but you said I could later when I get to this number 5. I'm right now at number 1, and I want to throw fireballs at number 5. So nothing matters to me until that number turns into 5 and I get fireballs. Everything else is filler until that happens.
Absolutely true.
Right? And ultimately, the GM will say something like, okay, well, hey, listen, when you manage to rescue the kidnapped mayor of the town, you'll get your next level. But there's no indication for how much progress you're making towards that. Outside of story
that
clues.
Political fracker. I don't want to rescue him. I want to throw him in a pit. Why would I want to get XP out of saving somebody who doesn't deserve to be saved?
It says fighter right here on my sheet. Why do you think I'm here?
So, Lessons, you just immediately pointed out another big issue here, which is that the definition of a milestone in itself can be railroading things down a direction. Right? You make certain assumptions as a GM when you say, okay, when the next big thing happens. As a GM, you should have an idea of what that big thing is. Otherwise, you'll go 20 sessions without giving them experience points. And if your impression is that, oh, when they beat the dragon, that implies they're going to beat the dragon. Or that they're going to be striving to beat the dragon, which maybe they might not want to do.
Right. And my quick interjection here would be the way that I've seen it, which was used in 5th edition. When I started to pick it up, I ran it first for all my friends, and I did with Horde of the Dragon Queen. And the way it suggests to do milestone experiences, hey, we have each of these chapters. Each of these chapters is probably a session, but once you get to the end of this chapter, milestone. And of course, if you play out 1 session per chapter, that'd be about 8 sessions, so it can go by very, very quickly. There's no downtime at all. You immediately get it, snap, 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 which is, of course, sort of the opposite end of constantly waiting for it. It's just constantly happening because it's happening on story beats and the story's progressing and your character's progressing with the story.
Yeah, I have less issue tying milestone progression to sessions because that way, at the very least, you're always getting that steady increase in ability and it's not being arbitrated by the GM. So I'm less opposed to that. And I think the way that traditional XP runs also works the best when you are getting a steady flow of experience points, regardless of whether you're killing things or solving, local political disputes.
Right, it's the carrot to a lot of actions. I'm doing things because I want experience. The game tells me experience is what's important, so I'm going to go do the things that give me the experience.
And I think milestone,
and some people can feel rudderless without it.
Milestone also kind of violates an aspect of this, which is not even implicit. It's implicit, but for people who dig into it, XP or skill points, whatever. What it is a currency. It's a very limited, very specific currency that you earn as you play the game, whatever the goals and aspects of the game might be. And every so often you turn in your currency, says, what do I get? Okay, you get more power, you get more abilities, you get more skills, you get to a new title, you get whatever it is that reward. Milestones is just, hey, you just get the stuff.
Well,
you cross the threshold and you open the door and you stepped outside. Inside the room, you were level 1. Outside of the room, you're level 2.
Well, I mean, I want to go back and ask, like, the theory behind XP in the first place. Like I already said my angry rant of, I want fireballs. Why are you making me wait? And you're right. Experience points are a form of currency. They're exchanging. They're time based. Like, I wanted to start as a fireball throwing wizard, but you told me I can't do that until a certain amount of time has passed. And, until we pass enough 4 milestones so I can level up 4 times. And so this delayed gratification of telling me it's not going to happen until later is supposed to make me feel better that I've accomplished something. And now I want to get into the reason why experience points sucks is because it's a rule to solve a problem you don't have. Because Dungeons and Dragons, as I'm get to say it again, back then we didn't call them roguelike permadeath games. Back then we called them games. And so the theory was that you wanted to earn experience points without dying. And if you died, you were dead and removed from play. Now, that last thing I have to emphasize, because that doesn't happen in D&D anymore. I've seen people, they keep rezzing people at first level.
Or really, even without like that sort of permissiveness, by the time a group of characters in most editions reach like level 5, they have some capacity to do it, and once they hit 7, it's usually completely free game.
I mean, the revolving door death gets a little silly, but now in like this came up during when we were writing Vital Hearts, which is an MMO-based game. You can't threaten to kill player characters because it's not going to happen. Like when I was complaining about stuff like Tyrant Queen, it has no provisions for player death. They haven't even thought of what would happen if you went to one of those milestone encounters and actually lost.
Right.
Yeah.
The players go there, they lose track of the caravan, and well, now what do?
Or, God forbid, they just kill all of us. Maybe we roll like ass and they roll good and we all die. And we're not going to get rezzed by the Dragon Queen minions. They're going to throw timbers on our corpses and burn us if we're lucky.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and that's where like this entire idea of, well, milestones feel like we're delaying it and they feel unearned. And I'm just at the point out here, the reason why they feel unearned is because time in a modern role-playing game is a de facto assumption that you are going to live that long.
Right, yeah.
And, that's, I'm not saying that's bad. I'm saying that that's what's happening. Mm-hmm. Because we know you're going to live that long. So milestones don't feel like a reward. They feel like I killed enough time. And this is different from when we talked about like traditional XP, because in older games, your goal was to maximize XP while minimizing risk that you wanted. And you got XP not just for killing monsters, but also for treasure. So your goal was, can we get, is this treasure worth a lot? And if we take it home and cash it in for XP, because we got to take it home. We can't you don't get XP in the field. Not in old games. You had to go train.
Yeah.
So
you would also get XP for later on for also undoing traps, creating magical items, and other things as well.
But XP you don't level up in the field. You have to spend a specific formalized downtime called training, where you cash it in. So you can't grind. You can't go out into the wilderness and stab random creatures and fill up an XP bar and then poof, you're level 12 right here in the middle of the field. That doesn't happen in old school games. But the real thing I want to get at was the reason why traditional XP existed was, okay, this is something no one does. You may have noticed that in Dungeons & Dragons and in Pathfinder, going from level 1 to level 2 takes less experience than going from level 11 to level 12.
Yes.
The theory behind that was that when your party has people in it of mixed levels, like some of us are level 3 and some of us are level 8, and someone shows up with a new character at level 1, because you always show up with a new character at level 1, that they would level up faster because the threats that they're experiencing are more dangerous for them, and the rest of the party carries them until they get closer to our level, because each of these is spread apart. They keep changing the formula, but if you notice, it grows wider with each step. And so the theory was we could level them up faster. And the reason why I mention this is because this is solving a problem that no one has, because no one does this. If someone shows up and says, hey, I want to play the game, you could say, well, we're all at level 5, so you're at level 5 too. That whole milestone thing of experience over time, bullshit. We just did that to waste their time. If you just made a new character, we just put them at level 5.
Right, and the reasons at the table are very obvious. It can be exclusionary to the new player to put them at a lower level, and now they can't engage with the same content that everyone else is.
I want to address that because that's a really good point. Because I think a lot of the changes to how experience works are in the name of that kind of thing, where you want to be careful that you're not being exclusionary, because it's a mechanical system that tends to support a gatekeepery kind of attitude. Yeah. However, I would also argue that you do lose some stuff in that, right?
Right, you can never have Gandalf and the Hobbits as an adventure in D&D if you follow this. Yeah. And I've tried formatting that myself in my head a lot. It's very difficult to kind of pull off.
Well, so my argument, and I've tried to sell this to a couple different groups, and it really comes down to the player, if they're into this idea or if they are, philosophically opposed to it. But for me, I think what's so cool about experience points, that accumulated currency, like Lessons said, is that if you look at it in a certain way, and if you handle it a certain way, it actually can represent the legitimate growth of your character, right? Of all of the deeds that they have done and completed. If you're playing an MMO, this is how it works. Your character isn't getting bonus XP when all of their friends go off and do stuff and they missed a session, and they're not getting XP for the times that they die and
I'm
have
gonna
to
stop you right there. Someone's not playing EVE Online.
I certainly am not playing EVE Online.
Go on.
I tried.
Going for the low blow.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the point I'm saying is that there's something kind of cool about this idea that your character's level is actually the culmination of their deeds, of the things that they succeeded at, and having characters at different levels creates an inequality which is very unegalitarian, and I understand why people are against it generally in a group cooperative game. But I think that if there's a way to destigmatize it and to ensure people that just because you're not yet level 12 and your fighter is level 12, it doesn't mean that you're less of a player or less of a skilled player or whatever they think it means. There's something kind of cool about that. Maybe going back to what Griff said about having oh yes, Gandalf is represented by these mechanics. He's a level 17 wizard, and these hobbits are level 1.
To keep the level 1 hobbits alive somehow.
Right. So I've played I've played games that way, and it's kind of fun. Maybe not with that large of a differentiation, but I've played games where it's okay, you died or you wanted to roll up a new character. That's fine. You're going to start one level below where everyone else is. And after playing that way for a couple months, no one was the same level. There was a weird spread, but it didn't seem in this one game example, it did not ruin our fun.
Yeah. And
but also
it does require buy-in from the players, I think.
Encounter starting at third edition with CR and EL, which is something that's
expected encounter challenge. Yes,
exactly. So you have to supposedly they both mechanize and mathematize this, if that's been a word, but it never actually works because it's just a random kind of dark play kind of thing. You get close enough.
I would say when everything is as expected, it works decently, but as soon as you start hitting edge cases, it falls apart.
It's broken as design, because I like to remind people the theory behind challenge rating is enough to diminish about 4 characters about 1/4 of their resources each, which I'd like to point out mathematically means killing one of you outright would also be included.
That's also a fair thing.
It's the way it's designed. It could just be that they all just, or me, my big example of when the 6 kobolds show up in the first round, if they all target the wizard, they'll kill it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So you as a GM have to choose: do the kobolds, all kill the one guy with the AOE who's in pajamas, like they would do because they don't want to get killed in one hit, or would they randomize and spread it out? And then you're in that weird nebulous range of, that's kind of a different debate. I mean, like as I said earlier, I don't understand where you guys are getting this concept of death, because from what I've seen from the way people are playing the game, death is not, the permanent death. I have to say, permanent death is so rare that I have to qualify the word death with permanent.
Right. Here, though, I think I'd like to go ahead and shift the window. I think we've been focusing a lot of like experience versus milestone. Let's take a look more at like the point-based solution here, which World of Darkness, I think, is like the point to start with here, where it has goals. You get bits of experience points, and you can cash those in as you go.
That's not that's not how World of Darkness does it.
No, it totally is. With Requiem, 2nd edition,
Okay,
you have a list of you have a list of goals. You get beats. 5 beats is 1 experience points.
Well, see, that's the problem. That's 5 beats is 1 experience points, and you're saying when we accomplish the story beats, if we get to them, it's in Chronicles of Darkness, God Machine. But that's also, we're kind of back to milestones. That's kind of like saying every 5 milestones you get an upgrade.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But I think it does there is a little bit of a difference between the regular experience over in the traditional side and these like little mini goals, because you're constantly experiencing these progressions rather than ending up with Gandalf and the Hobbits. Like if a brand new character with a brand new sheet comes to a vampire game, they are empirically have fewer things they can do, but they could still be good at something and even the best at something, and still be somewhere on the same tier.
Despite the fact that these games have points in them, like you could say this is a 100-point character, this is a 200-point character. People don't compare vampire characters that way.
Exactly.
People don't talk about their vampire characters saying, "Yeah, here's my character. They have 325 experience points, or they have 87 beats." They don't say that out loud, even though that is a rule that governs their character. And so that you often get a lot more flexibility in a point-based game. I mean, also, like we've gone this far, I really have to tout, because I work for Sanguine. The Sanguine default experience point system isn't any of the ones you mentioned. Because the Sanguine default system is what we call the goals system, which is based off of quests in video games. Whereas the GM tells you, hey, here's an objective, like find the other half of this locket, or stab Della Vega and leave him in an unmarked grave, or something like, so
you accomplish something and you get something explicit, which is different from getting the point and then slowly getting extra
right. And in
points.
theory, and some people look at it as you just get 5 experience points every time you accomplish a goal. Fine. Right. And that is, it's still the story beats, because in theory, we should be resolving each of these things. But as we pointed out earlier, the traditional and the milestone systems have this feeling of time, which is where if I wait long enough, I'll eventually get to level 5. And someone out there, I know you may not be listening, but I know some of you have stories of players who are literally counting the amount of experience points and then bringing up to the GM, hey, you're under par. Like, we should have more.
Used to have that happen, 100%.
Yeah.
I've seen that. So, or you'll get other people who aren't counting but are frustrated. Once again, the angry Rafferty over those tables, like, we get this verbal. Everyone shut up and stop doing all this stuff. Let's accomplish the milestone. Right. And so the idea that we made them goals was the idea that, like, okay, you might actually fail at this. And then there was the idea that we haven't pushed, but maybe we should, that they could expire over time. Like, if I have to go save the princess, if the princess gets killed, that goal disappears from my list and I don't get it. And that makes people feel like, okay, the consequence of failure. We didn't have to kill the players to do it like you would in a traditional system. And like I point out, we weren't going to do anyway. Instead, it's you fail to accomplish this beat. So by failing to accomplish this, you don't get the reward. And that was the theory behind it of. Now, of course, the Cardinal games also give it to you over time, because we do give you like 1 XP per story beat, but we give you the 5 and the 10s for actually accomplishing big stories. So we had a compromise.
Right. It's not like objectively one thing. And like we mentioned with like point versus level, nothing is, there's a spectrum of things.
There's also, I think, something that is in both goal and I said it, and I think I can say it in this either it's XP given, right, milestone style, or is it earned, traditional style, right? Because yes, it's a currency, and that's why I talk about currency. It's over time, but there's a feeling when you are, of course, you are going out there to kill the monster, that you are going out there to kill the monster. Not that I guess I have to kill the monster, like I said earlier, because that's what's expected of me, right? Regardless of my feelings or my character or whatever, right?
I want to throw fireballs.
Oh, you want to throw fireballs, right?
If we kill this monster, it gets me closer to my goal of throwing fireball.
And also, I do like the goal system, and it's not the only system that it's goal orientated, because when it allows for players to set up their own goals, or the group to set up their own goals, which Ironclaw actually does.
Which actually is a thing in the Ironclaw game. We usually don't let them do it once, but we've been right there. And I should also mention, now that I think about it, there is another system. Some of the Powered by the Apocalypse games use a relationship system, where every time your relationship with someone maxes out, either positive or negative, you gain a character upgrade, which is a hilarious system to me, because I can't imagine how it actually works in practice.
I don't think, I haven't seen that in particular, but I do remember Masks, the way that it would assign advancements is, hey, go ahead and at the end of the game, let's go ahead and have our little debrief, and we'll go ahead and say, hey, your character archetype has a question. Did you do X with another character? Explain.
Well, and that's getting into the idea
that would be what you should have been doing during the session.
Right, and that's getting into experience as something related to the story. See, another big problem with traditional and milestone is that the experience is abstract. Milestone is just time, and with traditional, it's did you kill something, or did you accomplish a goal? Here's a number. Whereas with the system that you see in some of these PBTA games like Masks, the idea was, okay, what did you do to further your character growth? Because you did something to further your character growth, here's a reward. The story is now specifically a part of the character's growth, instead of story being something that happens while we're earning XP.
I was having this very conversation, I should say argument, with a friend of mine recently. We were talking about something we've talked about here a lot, about how D&D is kind of the all games to all players sort of thing, and how I was arguing that, well, a lot of players today think that these games are about telling stories, but there's nothing mechanically in the game of D&D that encourages people to tell stories. The mechanics encourage people to kill, and that there are other games out there that actually encourage the kind of role-playing that people want in D&D and get by just ignoring the rules of D&D. Again,
right, rules endorse behavior is something that we say every now and then here, I think, right?
Right.
So if your rules are you only advance because you murder, well, why do we care about doing any of the role-play?
And it's once again, Rafferty's always angry at, like, your favorite streams. Like, you guys can enjoy them, but the thing I find... It gets on my nerves that the unifying theme behind a lot of these streamed games is a bunch of bumbling adventurers who fail upwards by killing a bunch of stuff and engaging in a lot of jocular or Adult Swim style humor on the way there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I'm not saying you can't have fun with that. It's just like,
but it's presenting a different impression of what the game actually is.
We're framing gaming as in, this is all gaming offers you. Don't ask for more. That's my favorite review of Hackmaster, when someone pointed out that, like, the joke behind the Hackmaster joke game is, like, the game is presented to you as, like, don't ask questions. You could never do anything more. This is the best you could ever aspire to. Just wander around and kill things. And, like, that joke gets so old so fast because it's so depressing.
Because it's so
incredibly
real. Well, there's something to, I will definitely say that I like the goal-oriented XP system, and for a reason that we hadn't really mentioned yet, is something that I think most games need. it serves two purposes. In addition to just advancing, I think every game needs a mechanic for reminding its players what the hell they're doing in any given moment, because oftentimes you're spending weeks or multiple weeks between sessions. When you're within a session, it can get easy to get wrapped up in the minutia of like a combat or a skill roll. So having something where you can be like, wait, where are we? Like we're in a basement, we're in a dungeon. We were here for some reason, but what is that reason? Having a list somewhere that says like, oh, we're here to find the dragon and slay it or parlay with it.
As I'm fond of repeating, this is a game and people play it to have fun. Part of what that means is, okay, I have to pay my bills, take care of my relatives, and deal with the dumpster fire of the outside world. By the time I get back to your table, this is a C priority at best. I've already forgotten everything.
Right. Also, I think I had to bring. Sorry about that.
I'll go for it.
The flexibility. If you're going to have any sort of skill currency rewards, because this is also a reward system, right? How flexible is it? Right. D&D still has quite a bit of inflexibility in that it's kill a thing or reach a milestone, stuff like that. But what happens if there's, and some games start to do this, like if you make the GM laugh, that's a sort of very much, late 1980s addition to XP system. Hey, you did something funny, everybody laughs, so you got an XP. Right. Is XP also only given for what happens in game?
Oh,
what happens in the table?
We haven't talked about Camarilla. So there is a large live action component to Vampire, and Camarilla has very specific rewards for experience points because you might be playing it with strangers. You get experience points for bringing snacks to the game, and you get experience points for cleaning up after the game is over.
Now, funnily enough, in a lot of other tables I've been at, that's occasionally just like a improv rule, and usually one that is played lightheartedly. It's like, oh, you brought snack, you have 25 experience, it's fine.
I remember when it was introduced, and some of the more hardcore vampire people I know were like upset.
Mm-hmm.
And
the experience for cleaning up is also a very practical one. You need some volunteers to clean up the place quickly so everyone can get out and go.
And you're a bunch of losers who won't clean up unless we offer you something.
Exactly.
Yeah. But one of the things I'm going to give you the often maligned shopping session in D&D and other games, right?
Shopping session.
Right? Actually, a lot of people do have fun just talking to the shopkeepers and haggling for things and stuff like that. Maybe we have a more flexible experience system. For example, if you get into a situation where you start talking to a shopkeeper, and it has happened to me as a GM where I just get an idea right then and there. It's like, oh, the shopkeeper mentions that he needs some help with something. I didn't write that down, whatever.
Yeah, you do some merchant role playing to make it fun.
Exactly.
Or I'll give you
the XP system should back that up, and it shouldn't just be go to the basement and kill the rats, right? It should be, something else, right? Like acquiring
You objectively made his life better.
Here's where I want to bash down the assumptions, because all of this is we're assuming that experience is a number that represents your ability to improve your character.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that you that when experience points go up, you then elect to choose certain improvements to your character that you choose on your own.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't always the way. Like in older Dungeons and Dragons, if you wanted to get new wizard spells, you had to find that shit. And when you found it, you had to make a random roll to see if you were even allowed to learn it.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the growth in those games, there's a big difference between getting to level 5 and writing down I have fireballs, and getting to level 5 and finding a fucking scroll that I can transcribe successfully with fireball.
Yeah, that's why XP is one of multiple currencies in a game.
Well, I'm going to stop you right there and saying, what game are you talking about? Like with a modern Dungeons & Dragons or Pathfinder game, you have a number, and when it reaches certain levels, you get whatever upgrade you want.
Yeah, but I'm talking about getting other things like magical items or something like that. Or living space. And so not all rewards are... About
other rewards such as magic items, which are usually random and controlled by the universe. Although that depends on who you talk to. Because I remember D&D 4 where GMs were just giving you whatever item they wanted. probably because D&D 4 didn't have random tables in it.
Oh, actually, no, it had huge tables.
I think they added those later because I don't think those were in the basic.
Yeah. No one on the basics.
It's been too long, so I don't remember.
I mean,
really.
well, also once again, AD&D discussion. Eventually, someone in the thousands of pages added what Rafferty is complaining wasn't. All I had to do was spend $800 and $15 a month and beyond.
So one last reframing, though, I think would be to shift over to the none category, which I think you've even written up here on our little board.
Well, I mean, well, there's the none category where you actually don't level up at all. It's rare, but it shows up in gaming. Some of the games that we've written, like for example, our Madcap cartoon game, we didn't have a role playing, like an upgrade system.
Yeah,
Why?
and we played that for a little bit, and I definitely had fun with it. But of course, the context for none is, so what do you do in the game? What are your incentives to be doing things other than the explicit outside objective of you came here to have fun, right?
And I want to build on that by saying that like we're magic items are just a small part of it. One thing that we're ignoring of the idea of experience is the idea that we transformed the world, or at least transformed the story of our characters. We may have made friends with these people. We made enemies with these people. We acquired an estate, or we destroyed something that has refugees. Something I really missed from D&D 3rd edition was the prestige, which was the idea that in order to become a member of this order or this clan or this society, you must do something in the first place to impress them for them to let you in. And that unlocked special abilities you were allowed to buy only after you did this one intangible. And that's what most people think of when they talk about a life experience, actual things that happen. One problem with the phrasing of milestone is like a milestone is supposed to be when we've accomplished a story thing, but like we said, it seems completely unrelated. Like a story beat is just, we accomplished a story beat, now I can throw fireballs. It's like nothing.
It's time for people to get something new and have more fun with the game. So here's your level.
Right, and so one game I think that made some good strides with that was like Blades in the Dark is a very aggressive relationship tracker, and they have an aggressive system that encourages it that when bad things happen to you, it's people who hate you that, like, you make a random effect roll. It's like, okay, pick a clan that hates you, and they show up and do bad things, which makes it feel like, hey, the world's responding to us. We pissed off the police, and now they're giving us trouble.
Right, it very much tries to systematize that thing that maybe should be happening, but is otherwise hard to keep track of.
Yeah, well, a lot of games experiment with reputation systems. Blades in the Dark is one of the few I've seen that work. And it's also an aggressive part of the game, because in Blades in the Dark, you're in a specific city, and the city rotates around you. You're specifically not a murder tourist. You have an HQ. So you care about what happens on the south side of town because it's the town you're in, and it's south of you. So,
you live in this district. There's these people here. You probably don't want to piss them off. You want to steal from someone else.
Yeah, so that kind of leveling. And also like event-based leveling, it's like one game that had a mixed hybrid system was Wicked Ones. And one thing I enjoyed about Wicked Ones was they had two different experience point systems. One of which was just to get your stats above 0, which was just do shit.
Right.
But they had another one that was every time you almost get killed or get incapacitated, because if your stress meter gets maxed out in that, you are removed from play until the next session. Not forever, it's next session. But only maxing those out would let you buy your stats above the starting max. And so you were actively encouraged to do that, to every week, either almost get killed or go crazy. Like go hog wild and just blow everybody up. And what that encouraged you to change the play experience. Because another thing we haven't talked about is, oh my God, the stupid experience point system of exercising, I think is one word. Do you guys play roguelikes and heard the phrase exercising before?
Yes, and I can definitely think of plenty of video game examples of this being a property.
Right, like
because it makes a lot of sense there.
Like a lot of Final Fantasy games and the like would be that every time you use a weapon or a technique, it gets its own XP bar and eventually it goes up. There's a big one here is Burning Wheel, where in Burning Wheel, your skills only go up if you use them successfully. And then because if one rule is good, 2 rules are twice as good, only if you fail a certain number of times.
I think Cthulhu gets pretty close to it, doesn't it? Similar, not the
Cthulhu
same.
is the first one. Cthulhu is it only goes up if you exercise it, and then at the end of the session you roll to see if you fail it to see if it goes up.
Yeah.
And once again, the where I'm going back to rules endorse behavior. The problem with an exercising system is then you get players who want their numbers to go up, so they go out of your way. So this is why Wicked Ones was good, because Wicked Ones, we want you to go crazy and go on rampages. So we give you specific experience point rewards for going crazy and going on rampages. Then you go to like Burning Wheel or Cthulhu, which is you get experience points when you fail using skills. So you go out of your way to fail at skills. You go out of your way to do this because you want to level them up. And
Right, and this is maybe the same problem with, say, World of Darkness Flaws, where you get experience points by ruining everyone else's experience.
well, that's not how flaws are supposed to work. World of Darkness Flaws, I'm a big fan of. The way the flaw is supposed to work is, I think this is a brilliant rule, is you write down something that's bad about your character, like I have a deep dark secret, or maybe a physical infirmity, like I'm missing an eye or something like that. One of the guys had the what's that tattoo movie?
Girl with the dragon tattoo?
No, the one where the guy can't remember anything.
Memento.
Memento. I can't believe I forgot that. Senior moment. I forgot. Yeah. Well, and this just turned up into one of my favorite fantasy novels. So we had one player who just wrote down for the vampire game, I suffered a brain injury. I have no short-term memory. Every time I wake up, it's 2003 again. And in any other role-playing game, we'd have to argue about how many points that was worth as a disad or if that's really a disad. Nope. Not in World of Darkness. In World of Darkness, it's just, okay, if something happened to you that is bad because you forgot everything that happened yesterday, or we can ruin one of your rolls, we'll give you extra experience points. And that just changed it. So instead of arguing like we were talking about earlier with Lesson's problem of we gave you 15 points because you said you care about your family or something like that. Now never bring this up again because I got my 15 points. I never, I paid my money. Now if the GM never remembers I have this disad, I don't get points for it. Now we've changed it to an experience. The player with rules endorsed behavior is actively reminding the GM, hey, did you want to ruin my day so I can get extra experience points? And now we're back. Now it's a positive thing. And also it gets to what I've been complaining about experience points, where you're getting life experience points for dealing with a specific story-based problem. Your character had to overcome their secret or their infirmity to get to the next obstacle to get that point, rather than that point just showed up because time passed.
Right. But I'm still gonna draw the parallel with sneaking and choosing to fail it, because that prompt to make it harder on you could still make it harder for the other players to accomplish your objective because you have failed at it in some way or made it harder for them. If you have the player who's sneaking around and he fails, then obviously everyone's alerted.
Or if I tried to shoot the monster and failed because I only have one eye and no depth perception, and the monster eats you, that would make life harder for you. Yes. But on the other hand, it's still a story experience point. See, one of the big complaints that we're having about these other systems is that they're time-based abstractions. If I sit here through the bullshit story long enough, I'll get to level up. So you get players who are hungry to move the clock faster. Whereas we'd rather have players asking to make, instead of just running the clock faster so we get stuff, we'd rather have players focused on making things happen in the game faster.
Or happen in general.
Right. The relationship system is really weird to me because, I'm always a fan of if you have a rule, then using the rule should make the gaming experience better. If the rule isn't making the game experience better, you throw it out the window. It's bad. It's a bad rule. And that's why, I would the exercising rule is okay, after the fight's over, we all jump for joy. Or you get the paradox in Cthulhu where you're rolling your gun skill 9 times in a combat, but you might be rolling persuade or library use only once. So gun skill goes up 9 times faster.
Right.
So that just leads to bad problems. And the relationship thing I mentioned is they're better about it in masks, but in Apocalypse World, you can get abilities to make your relationships go up faster. And so literally you could infinitely level up like in a second. You could
Right, it could be very, very silly. I think other PBTAs kind of looked at that and probably thought the same. It's like, no, that's a little goofy.
Yeah, that gets into a whole category of what we talked about a while ago. Don't do it because you can. But no, I mean the big problem. I think to cap all this off, the big problem with experience points is experience point games run into the theory that whatever your character is right now, you're unhappy with it. You would rather be more powerful. You would rather be throwing fireballs. Or you went out and bought this book that says when you get to level 3, you get to take the Eldritch Knight or Druid shapeshifting path, and that's what you actually want to be doing. But we told you for some reason you can't be at level 20. For some reason, eventually you'll get to level 20. I mean, we're not lying about that, right? We didn't give you this game with level 20 and tell you, we're going to reboot at level 7. Fuck you.
Yeah, but I think I think the conceit is it is the question that says, where do we go from here? Which I think underpins all of this, right? You're here now, wherever your status is. Where do we go from here?
Yeah, and I think one thing that we're really ignoring is that in a computer game, often in the better computer games, the role-playing game element, the experience point system, isn't just a function of time. It's also a function of gating complexity. We don't give you, the boomerang that can hit multiple targets until we're convinced you know how to leave the village.
Right.
So in theory,
you have to demonstrate you can do it 3 times in a row, then we let you advance.
Right. So in theory, Dungeons and Dragons, the cool Eldritch Knight and martial fighter stuff that gets unlocked at 3rd level, in theory, you played the game to get to 3rd level, so you already went through levels 1 and 2 to get there. So you already know how to play the game before we gave you all this crazy shit. I say in theory because in practice it's undermined by 2 things. First of all, D&D still front loads you with too much shit.
Yeah.
Because they still give you all this shit at 1st level. They could have gate kept that and made the first element. And secondly, the problem we mentioned earlier, which is because level is such an obvious number, people get sad when it's like, hey, he's at level 10, I'm only level 3, I'm gonna get killed by all the challenge ranks. Okay, fine, we'll just level you up for free and make a complete mockery of the experience point system, pointing out it's a terrible joke in the first place.
Well, again, I was talking about that earlier too. It's a situation where they saw that there was bad table manners happening because people were being gatekeepery and or abusive. And then they said, okay, well, what can we do to the underlying mechanics to discourage this?
You didn't mention whiners. What I see are whiners where someone shows up and says, hey, everyone else is at level 8. I need to be at level 8 or I can't compete.
Yeah. A variety. People are wrong on all sides of this argument. I'm for that.
And really, one thing that started to show up I want to say about this programmed growth. I'm a bigger fan of point-based games. One thing that was a big change is there's a huge difference in a point-based game and a level-based game. Because in a point-based game, you might be doing what I want to call spot defending, which is if I went on an adventure and I fell in a river and I almost drowned, I might spend my points on buying swimming because I don't want that to happen again. But if you're playing a level-based game and you almost fell in a river and drowned and you level up, you might not buy swimming as your next upgrade because, first of all, it might not even be an option. Fuck you, wizard. But it also, that happened several story beats ago. I didn't level up after that. I'm only buying what's important to me. And also, I might have my eyes on the prize. I want that super build I read about online. I already have all my level 1 through level 20 already programmed out because I'm following the recipe list. And so instead of getting a character who's molded by their life experience, you're getting some, experience is just a function of time and abstracted. So when the character gets to level 20, they weren't molded by their life. I mean, I'm comparing this to, let's toot our own horn, Ironclaw, where Anushka has my character has several upgrades on her sheet that she wouldn't have necessarily picked. But I know how to drive a car and I learned how to lie to people and all these other things because those happened to me while I was leveling up. And when they come up in the game later, I don't say, yeah, I almost drowned in a river, so now I can throw fireballs. I can say, yeah, we almost got caught by the law, so I've learned how to
keep
make
low profile.
But yeah, I learned low profile and how to lie to people making eye contact with the sea. And I can even, if I remember, I can point to the exact moment that happened in the story. that makes it feel like a life experience model, and that's what I think is like we really need to like bring that back. Almost all the systems we've been talking about have been leveling up happens separate from story experience, and really it should be that when your character levels up, the things that they are learning should be based on what they're doing.
Right.
I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, it goes back to that idea that like experience points are sort of have meaning outside of just how many, how long your character has stayed alive. And it's, well, there's even more context with the goal-oriented leveling up because of those reasons you said.
Some people will complain about that because, like some people don't want anything less than optimal. That's another reason why I'm mad at challenge ratings, because I enjoy building my character of being able to say, hey, I had to lie at this one point, so I bought deceit in case it happens again. But then now we're playing D&D where if I'm not optimized for level 17, the frost giant's going to mash me to paste because I didn't optimize my build for killing. And I think that whole mentality of role playing game elements are a function of time, poisons that well.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I think we're starting to reach like a bit of a conclusion here. What do you got to add to all this, Red?
Well, we kind of left this in the dirt. My big complaint with Milestone XP at the end of the day, which I still think doesn't... I think we've talked about a lot of really good approaches to character growth, mechanical growth in this game, so that's good. The one thing I would leave off on cautioning about Milestone XP is that I feel personally like it takes away from the player agency in the game, from the PC's agency in the game, because of a phenomena that when you do it long enough, you realize that every encounter you come across has to be theoretically a winnable scenario because you have no ability to grow outside of the critical path, right? Like you can't go and grind up in the dungeon. You can't choose whether you want to beat the dragon or learn kung fu because all of your advancement lies behind beating that dragon, which means that both that the dragon has to be defeatable if the GM knows what they're doing, but also that anything that you do that doesn't contribute towards your goal of beating the dragon is effectively wasted effort. And that, when you realize that as you're playing those games, it's like a splinter in your mind. You'll never get around it. It's very hurtful.
Zach, I've been complaining about that these published adventures seem to have no provision that you might actually fail. And I didn't even think of that you're pointing out, well, if we're doing milestones, you can't fail. And I mean, like, also, I'm going to do this, like, people who are complaining, D&D 4 is too much like an MMO. Well, D&D 5 has all these scenarios that you go through and never fail and automatically succeed and get XP over time. That's your freaking MMO, guys.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Lessons? What's your capstone on all this?
This is more of gameplay enforces rules enforce gameplay behavior. It's XP. I love XP. I love the idea of getting stronger and better, right? Character growth. I hate just being a character that never changes. But I have to go with, especially a lot of Rafferty have said that we should, and I think so many games are moving to this, is that we should tie it more to not only player agency, as Red said, but also story beats as generated in game, right? As they emerge in game, and not merely the grand design of the publisher, writer, etc. It was like, 3 sessions you're going to do this, and 5 hours you're going to do that, and 2 days, that just, it's easy to write, boring to play.
Yeah, I think the two takeaways here, one is an organic nature to it, where your progression is tied to what's happening and making it make sense and not just be, well, I almost drowned, so I guess I could do Fireball, like Rafferty said. And the other one is on the design side of it. This is a tool that you can use to tell people what's important, and even when you hand it over to other people to define, how you let them define that determines how the game kind of plays out, giving them something to do. And Rafferty, what do you got to top all this off with?
I mean, I was pretty much agreeing with all that. I think like the issues. I always go back to my core issue, which is, why do we have this rule in the first place? So we always need to ask, what was this rule for in the first place, and why are we keeping it? And as I mentioned earlier, the original bizarre experience point system was to level you up and see how far you could get. Milestones was because people don't like keeping track of math and they want the story to go forward, but it has that problem. I've warmed up more to the no experience point system a little bit more, because the idea that you frame it in terms of changing your relationships with other people or writing how the world state is changing so you can focus on that kind of story. Because anytime you have any sort of experience point mechanism, you are focusing on that Campbellian, my character must get better. And if you have an experience point system, you can't get mad at players for focusing on the experience point system. You're literally telling them, you're not. You will get better. All these splat books promise more stuff down the road. So if you have experience point system, then whatever it is, gaming the experience point system should reward your story rather than be working against it. Otherwise, it's a bad rule. And obviously, I'm biased towards the goal system because it's used in our games where we give you specific rewards for doing specific things.
Right. All right, then. So I think with that capping it all off, that's going to be it for this episode of Notes from the Aleph. We stream episodes bi-weekly Fridays at 2 p.m. Eastern. You can come join us live at twitch.tv/Ractus. We also stream and record weekly tabletop games at the same channel. You can come and join us when we start at 10 a.m., 2 p.m., and 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sundays and Wednesdays. Norman Rafferty here is a partner and writer for Sanguine Games. Check out sanguinegames.com and join us on Reddit and Twitter. And, of course, look forward to the upcoming Book of Coral's Ironclaw expansion book. Lesson Learned here can be found at Lesson Learned 1 on YouTube and Twitch. He has a number of different projects going on and a number of books on Amazon that you should all check out as well. And of course, let's not forget about RedRabbit. Don't forget to look him up and book a game over at startplayinggames.com as RedRabbit. And as always, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and come see us all again. Until next time.